Hello everybody. Today Corey has asked me to be a guest reader and read you a Christmas story. So I will be doing that. I have a very old story. It's not new, but it is one of my favorites. Actually, this was my Christmas story, one of them, when I was a little girl. And so I thought I would share it with you today. Some of you may have even seen this book before, especially if you're about my age or so. But if you have little ones or you yourself are pretty little, you probably haven't heard it because it's an old one and it will seem new to you. So it's called Christmas at the Rumpole Mansion. It's about a family of mice, and it's a story about giving and kindness and what to do with someone who you might find might be a little bit grumpy and how to cheer them up, and maybe that person's even you, who knows. So hopefully you enjoy it as much as I do. Crispy, crunchy, Christmassy snow covered the eaves and the window ledges of the old Rumpole mansion. Way up in the attic, cozy and warm, lived the Rumpole mice. Eustace and Prunella, the two mouse children, looked down with excitement on the snowy whiteness. So the mice live up in the attic of this old house. "Hooray!" squeaked Prunella as she grabbed her woolly scarf and hat and mittens. "Race you down the drain pipe," she yelled to her brother Eustace. Down she flew, ker-plop, right into a snowbank. It was lucky for Prunella that her mama had tied a very bright red ribbon on the little mouse's tail to match her holiday dress. Eustace gave her tail a good yank and out she tumbled. "Why don't you look where you're going, Pruny?" "I did," she spluttered. "And don't call me Pruny." She hated that name. Soon snowballs were flying. Zoom, splat, kerpow! "Oof!" gasped a familiar voice. It seemed to come from an oddly shaped snowball perched on top of a very long tasseled scarf. "Dagwood!" shouted Eustace and Prunella together. "The very same," Dagwood Barley replied with a flourish. "I'm babysitting while Mama is baking Christmas tarts," he added, importantly. Blinky and his wee sister Winky peeked shyly from behind the brick wall. "Us against you," laughed Dagwood as he threw an enormous snowball. Now, just at that moment, an old rat appeared, hunched beneath a load of twigs. Zowie! Dagwood's snowball smacked the rat right between the ears. "Brrr!" the old rat spluttered angrily, wiping off his wet whiskers and looking down at the sticks scattered about. "Dear me, I'm so sorry," said Dagwood. "Here, let me help you." The rat looked up fiercely. "Go away! Leave me alone, you meddling, mischievous little mice." He doesn't seem very happy. Grumbling to himself, the rat gathered his sticks and hobbled off toward the Rumpole mansion without so much as a backward glance. "What a mean old fellow," sniffed Prunella, "calling us names like that." "You don't suppose he's moved into our house?" asked Eustace in horror. "Let's follow him and find out," suggested Dagwood. Away they all scampered after the rat. As they had feared, he disappeared through a tiny door in the basement of the Rumpole mansion, and over the entrance was nailed a dirty bit of cardboard. It said, "Mr. Scratchley." You see it here, a little note, "Mr. Scratchley," and underneath was scrawled, "No visitors, positively none." The little friends tiptoed around the corner and peeked through a dirty basement window, and there was Mr. Scratchley busily making a fire. At that moment, the old rat looked up and saw the faces pressed up against the glass. Angrily, he shook his grubby paw at the children. "No visitors!" he shouted as the children ran away. "Positively none!" Notice what a difference it is, hey, between Mr. Scratchley's house and the Rumpole's house. Back the friends scurried up the drain pipe and into the warm, safe attic. Soon they had forgotten all about old Mr. Scratchley. After cups of hot cocoa and toasted muffins with lots of jam, they all joined in trimming the tree that the Barleys, their country friends, had brought to them from the forest. There were shiny balls of red, green, and gold, lots of sparkling tinsel, and real candles. Everyone clapped when Papa Rumpole lifted wee Winky up high in the air so that she could put the angel on the highest branch. The good smells from the kitchen reminded the little mice that the next day all the Barleys would come to share Christmas dinner at the Rumpole mansion. At last it was time for Dagwood and Blinky and Winky to go home. "Goodbye, goodbye," they all shouted as they put on their scarves and shoes. "See you tomorrow on Christmas Day." Tired but happy, Eustace and Prunella climbed upstairs to their room under the eaves. Little Prunella was asleep before she had finished her prayers, but Eustace crept to the window and looked out at the dazzling moonlight shining on the fresh white snow. What do you think he might see? To his surprise, he saw a small, stooped figure standing below the window and looking up at the moon. Sure enough, it was old Mr. Scratchley. He doesn't look at all ferocious now, Eustace thought. In fact, suddenly, Eustace had an idea. He got out his favorite green and red plaid scarf and he put it into a box. Then he wrote a note inviting Mr. Scratchley to Christmas dinner. Do you think Mr. Scratchley will accept? Clutching the box, Eustace hopped out the window and slithered down to the icy ground. Looks like he's even still in his pajamas. Soon he was at the tiny basement door. Carefully, he put his box on the mat so the note would show. In no time at all, Eustace was back upstairs and fast asleep in his own little bed. The next morning, the Barleys arrived at the Rumpole's door, bundled up to the tips of their red noses. They gathered around the crackling fire and wiggled their frozen toes to get them warm again. "Hooray!" they all cried when Papa Rumpole appeared in a Santa Claus suit to pass out candy canes. But where was Mr. Scratchley? Eustace wondered. And what would everybody think if he did come? And what if he were impossibly nasty and disagreeable and he ruined Mama's nice dinner? All at once, Eustace thought of the very worst thing of all. The beautiful scarf he'd wrapped up, Mama had made it for him last Christmas. She had been so proud and happy when he opened his present, and now he had given it away. And to the meanest, grumpiest rat in the whole wide world. Eustace felt absolutely awful. "Oh, I hope Mr. Scratchley doesn't come," he said to himself. Suddenly, I think Eustace is doubting his choice to be kind to Mr. Scratchley. Just then, there was a knock at the door, and in walked a bright green and red plaid scarf. At least that's all anyone could see. "I was invited to a Christmas dinner," a voice from behind the scarf said shyly. A trembling paw held up the note Eustace had put on top of the box. When Eustace looked around, Mama Rumpole was nodding and smiling at him so proudly. In fact, everybody was smiling, even Mr. Scratchley. Later, after the best and jolliest Christmas dinner ever, they all gathered in the parlor. "You can sit here," squeaked Pansy Barley, leading Mr. Scratchley to the chair closest to the fire. Prunella tucked a blanket around his knees, and Eustace brought him a steaming cup of tea. When they were all settled, Papa Rumpole read the Christmas story from the Bible. "For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, which is Christ the Lord," he began. Afterward, he added a very special verse. "It is more blessed to give than to receive." When everyone smiled and looked back at Eustace, he knew that those words were meant just for him. Hope you enjoyed that Christmas story. Merry Christmas.